So I'm going to start by going back in time actually to about April this year, and I just lifted not quite the last of my leeks, but nearly the last ones. You can see there's just a few left that haven't really developed that fully. They're more like baby leeks really. And you can see also from this that I grew them towards the very edge of the bed, and that's because they're in for such a long time. It's a nuisance if they're right in the middle of the bed when you want to prepare soil for the New Year's crops. And you can see that these have blanched quite nicely. These have made a decent sized leek, and they've blanched. The white piece at the bottom, that's what we call blanched, has been actually underground, so I've had to lift these quite carefully with a fork. You can't really just pull them out because you tend to snap them. And the ones there with the blue on it are called Northern Lights. It's a very late variety. So here's the bed I prepared for this year's leeks, and I actually sowed these on the same day that I took those ones up that we've just seen, and a few weeks later I pricked the seedlings out into quite small modules because I want to keep the root ball quite small. You could actually have sown these in an outdoor seed bed and transplanted them to get them to this intermediate stage, if you like, because I'm now going to plant them into their final planting positions. And what I need to do is make a hole so that I can actually drop them down into the ground, so that the base of the leek is basically below the soil level, and because there is no light getting to it, that's where it turns into that white blanched part of the leek. So I'm just making some holes here with a dibber. I actually find that a broom handle or something is perfect for this. Little dibbers tend to be, you need something that's got a fairly decent length, and you need to get a bit of strength behind it because the soil's actually starting to dry out quite a bit now, and it's as you say, I'm using the pointed end here. It's a little bit compact and hard to get through, but you don't actually want to do it when it's too loose either, because the holes crumble in straight away. So it's just the end of June. You can plant leeks out from about the middle of June right up perhaps to the middle of July. There's no real set date, but mine are ready to go out now. And I usually plant them after I've lifted an earlier crop, and in actual fact here I had my Japanese onions, or overwintering onions, and I've lifted them this week. So I'm using this bare patch on the onion plot to plant my leeks. And you can see they're ready to plant out here. I'm going to take a little bit of the compost off the root ball. If you had grown them in the ground to this stage, you can actually trim the roots before putting them down into the planting holes. The root balls here are just a little bit big to go down the hole properly. There we go, I've just sort of helped that one in a little bit, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes the soil does collapse in and almost fills the hole up, so just plant them very carefully, but don't firm them in, and try not to put too much soil around them, because this sort of almost like soft area of ground that we've created around the base of the leek is where they'll expand into. So it wants to be a fairly decent size without being well, too big so that they dry out too quickly. And I'm going to water them in just simply by filling these holes up with water, and that's probably the only time I'll water them, unless it gets really dry. And they probably won't do loads over the summer. They'll establish fairly well, but they won't swell up until the winter. Again, this is another late variety, and they tend to sit through the winter, and then March, April they start developing really nicely. And if you want baby leeks, you can actually put 2 or 3 seedlings into the same hole, and it'll keep them small, and you can lift them a bit earlier to make use of the baby leeks. And again, you can see I've kept them towards the edge of the bed there, with the celery and the chard, which are also winter crops that will go through the winter. There's a bit of spare ground here that I might put some catch crops like some more beetroot and lettuce. And you can see there's a lettuce crop there next to the carrots, and next to the carrots are the summer onions. They're not quite ready to lift yet, but they're doing pretty well. Unfortunately, the winter onions bolted We had a very, very hot spell in April, and it forced them to flower early, and therefore the bulbs didn't form terribly well. But these ones are coming along nicely. And just over here we've got this is my potato plot where I planted some squashes which are developing nicely. And here are the onions I lifted this week. They're drying out on a drying rack, so they're in sunshine. They get sun in the afternoon to dry them out, but they don't get any rain on them. They want to dry out nicely before storing. And I've cleaned off the worst of the soil, but they will want another tidy up before I actually store them. Take all the loose papery skins off the outside. And there's my shallots as well. They're drying quite nicely now.